Hi there, I'm Jessica Spangler with Holistic Approach Piano Studio. I live and teach in Metro Detroit, Michigan. I have been doing a little mini series all about simple music theory concepts, and I've been trying to break them down in a really down-to-earth way. Last week I started with isolating pitch versus rhythm, and then taking pitch a little further into melody versus harmony. We were deconstructing a familiar tune, namely Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, to help us learn these things. This week I want to take you through the key of the piece. We're going to learn about key centers, key signatures, how they affect the melody and harmony, how they affect your playing and your singing, how they affect your ability to make music with other people. If you are far enough in your lessons that you've already maybe been playing some key signatures, learning to read key signatures, then you don't need this. You already understand it. But I'm not actually going to delve into all the key signatures and their patterns in this video. The intent of this video is just to explain kind of the how and the why of the key signature, and not just the what, because you can already learn that in your lesson. You may hear lots of similar terms thrown around used to describe this concept. Key signature, key center, tonal center, the tonic, and while those might have slightly different specific definitions, they're all trying to explain the same root concept, which is the sense of home in a piece of music. And by home, I'm referring to a specific pitch, a specific letter-named note that the entire piece revolves around, and it keeps settling on it and will often end on it, unless you're playing a more complex form of music like jazz. This pitch is then known as the tonic of the piece, or the key of the piece. And not the physical keys of an instrument like the piano, but here we're using the word key just to describe whatever that central home note is, that central tone. And be aware that terms like tone, key, note, sometimes those can be used interchangeably, and so if there is a distinction, I'll try to remember to use the most accurate term. The key of a piece is usually easy to hear in the types of music that most beginners are going to be playing. You can often figure it out by ear, even if the student is not reading on the staff yet or reading letter-named notes yet. By nature, the central key of a piece is the most stable sounding pitch. It's the one your ear gravitates toward. It's the one it wants to hear, wants you to get there. So listen to Twinkle Twinkle again, and listen for the most stable pitch, one that doesn't leave you hanging or waiting for it to go somewhere. So, do you hear that final chord of the song? And this is the main note of that chord. Do you hear how the whole song is kind of leading up to that pitch, that tone? It wants to end there, it wants to settle there. It's a very stable tone out of all the other notes in the song. So I made it nice and easy. We played in the key of C so that we don't have to worry about any black keys, which is where a lot of beginners will be playing, and we call it the key of C. Our song revolved around C, it ended on C. We had a lot of other notes, but that was really our home base. Now, unless you have perfect pitch, you're not always going to be able to pull the tonal center out of thin air. If I didn't have the piano in front of me, I wouldn't necessarily have a reference point to know what note, the name of the note is that I'm hearing. But if you have an instrument, you can usually play around and match pitch and find what the key is of your song. And we also have written notation that just tells us this. It just makes it easy. So if you are getting further along in your lessons, you'll learn to read the notation in the music that tells you what key you're in. You don't even have to guess. But it's good to know how to find out by ear, because that helps you understand the concept that we have a note it revolves around. A lot of students dive into a new piece of music and ignore looking at that key, and then they're partway through a line before they realize something doesn't sound right. So I'd rather teach you how the key works first, and then when you see the different ones, you'll understand them better. It won't be a surprise or an accident or this extra add-on we're throwing at you. It's a real integral part of learning your music. So that was an easy example. It's easy to find the key of a song on a piano if you're in the key of C, because the key of C happens to use only white keys, where beginners tend to play. But let's do some magic, and we're gonna move the song up just a little bit. Here's where we were. Here's where we're going. Note, we shifted the entire piece up a step to D. So the melody and the harmony were still the same in relation to each other, but what happened? They shifted. And I had to use black keys to make it sound correct to your ear. If I had left them out, it would not be the exact same melody. Let's try just shifting it on the white keys. So that's not even just D minor, it's actually a mode. It's totally different. It's similar, it's definitely reminiscent of it, but it's not the same. This is because pieces don't just revolve around a central pitch. They're actually built in a certain way from the very beginning. They're built from a set of notes that naturally seem to go with that pitch. The notes that seem to go best are what we call a scale. We played based on the C major scale, then we played based on the D major scale. When we took out the black keys, we changed the pattern to what we call a mode. All right, now there are many scales. There are many scales for every key on this keyboard and every pitch that you can hear, so it can get very overwhelming. But basically, composers write their music based on a central key and the notes of its scale so that it sounds right to your ear and it has a familiar pattern, a familiar set of notes that you will be playing from. That's why we teachers work on scales with you. There's so much to learn about scales and from scales that I could do a whole series just on that. And I will probably get you some crash course videos on scales pretty soon. But for today, I just want to familiarize you with the term because it's so essential to understanding the key of a piece and a lot of other music theory. Now, why do we need to play in different key centers or key signatures? Why can't we always just play in C and forget those pesky black keys? Why are songs written in different keys? Why would we want to know how to change them if they're written in one key originally? First of all, though I don't have personal experience with this, some people do have a special sense of hearing a different mood associated with each different key, and I don't just mean between a major key and a minor key. All right, so we can have our major key, sounds bright and happy. And then we have our dark minor key, and I'm not talking about that. I mean even between two different major keys, they will hear a different aura associated with those. And to us, we don't really notice the pattern sounds the same because everything's relative to that pattern. We don't even notice what key we're in. They're essentially the same, just higher or lower. So for those of us that don't know what key we're in just by listening, what other reasons do we need to familiarize ourselves with all these possible keys? Why do we even have to play the black keys? Well, listen as I play from a C to a C. All right, there's 12 tones from C to C, 12 pitches to work with in every octave, every section from one key to the same key. All right, an octave higher. And what we know as black keys on the keyboard were actually just designed as a reference point for your eye and for your hand. Imagine trying to tell your student to find middle C in a sea of identical white keys. That would be pretty much impossible. So we need this pattern, we need this topography of the keyboard to get our bearings, have a baseline of where to go. And this limitation might not be found on other instruments. Other instruments might have a different set of limitations where some keys are a little less straightforward. Some pitches are less straightforward to find than others. So this is not an issue for most people. So you can't just say, well, I don't want to play the black keys, I'm going to play an easy key. An easy key is relative to what instrument you are on. And the topography of the keyboard cannot intimidate you from learning to play on all the keys, or you'll be very limited. Each instrument also has a different range of pitches that it can even produce, including your voice. So some instruments may simply not accommodate a certain piece. If it's got a huge range of pitches and you try to move it up a key, you're going to run out of keys on your instrument. Maybe you can play Twinkle Twinkle in the key of G, but not in C, because it would go too high or low for your instrument and you'd run out of playable notes if you shifted it too far, okay? That's just an example. It's not likely. Most instruments have plenty of range for Twinkle Twinkle. So the composer chose his key for the piece based on what his instrument could play best, not on whether you were going to come across black keys or not, okay? And the issue is compounded when you are playing with fellow musicians, because what's a comfortable key for you to sing Twinkle Twinkle may be way too high or too low for another vocalist to comfortably sing with you, or too painful for a guitarist to create chords for, or too difficult for a new pianist to play if there are more black keys than they are experienced navigating. So there are many reasons a composer or artist may choose the key that they did. And if it is a key that you're not confident in yet, just practice. You can learn to actually transpose a song to shift it to your needs. And of course, practicing your scales and the scales for each piece you're working on will familiarize not only your eyes with reading, but your hands with finding more and more of these keys and more of the black keys within each key so that you aren't intimidated to play. So I hope by the end of this you at least understand what is meant by the key of a piece, why it's important to know, how we manipulate the key to help us write new music and make pieces easier to play and sing, especially with our friends. So keep checking back. I'm going to continue to break down some more musical concepts as simply as I can for you. We've been deconstructing Twinkle Twinkle to demonstrate melody and key, and next time I would like to begin putting it back together as we jump into the shallow end of harmony. Harmony can get very complex very quickly, so I will try to keep it simple and natural. And if you are finding these videos helpful, it would help me if you would subscribe and turn on your alerts so that you can be notified when I post my next videos. And if you have anything to add or have any questions for me, please tell me in the comments. And let me know how you found my page, because I'm so new to this. It would really help me out. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. And unless you have perfect pitch, you're not going to be able to pull that key center just out of thin air. You might need an instrument to play around and find a reference note. Oh, why am I looking at that? Okay, let's try that again. And so it's not the iconic Twinkle Twinkle melody. It's similar. You can hear it kind of in there, but it's not that. I could do an entire series just on that. Whoops. Ah, dang it. I was looking at that stupid screen again. Okay, let's try that again.